This is the main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Peter M, who's come to share on the topic of emotional sobriety for up to 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for a Q&A portion of the meeting. Peter, over to you.
Thank you, my fellows. Good evening from London, from Hackney. You can probably hear my little beautiful dog in the background barking. She's been away from home for a little while at my son's and my grandkids, and I've been to pick her back up today. And she's a little bit sort of slightly uncomfortable while she settles with the noises again. So you might hear her in the background, but by the grace of God, a beautiful fellowship, loving individuals who I never knew I would know, right? I found a way to live, right, which hasn't required me to take any form of mood-altering substance for just over 19 years, one day at a time. Now, I say this in the context, right, of picking up a crack pipe in 1981 at a mere humble age of 20 or 21 years of life, when my life was just beginning. I picked up and started sucking on the devil's dick, right, in 1981, and it had me by the short and curlies from that day onwards to the last pipe I had, which was January the 6th, 2006. So when I tell you that I clearly have recovered, I can say that with the utmost confidence, because I have to tell you, there were some dark and sorrow days during those 25 years of chronic crack cocaine, heroin and alcohol addiction. I'm so grateful I have been from that day that I entered what I call the modern day asylum, right, which was the treatment centre, right, where absolutely everybody was stark raving mad. And yet the paradox about all of that was when I entered that nut house, somewhere inside me, I knew that you had a solution, that up until that point, no amount of professionals, no family, no kids could get me to do what it was you guys were going to get me to do. I knew that when I got around you guys, when I finally conceded that of myself, by myself, I had utterly failed against this humongous beast. Right? Once I had conceded, and once I stopped saying, yeah, I know, I stopped saying, yeah, but. You said to me, Peter, shut up. Let us re-educate you. Let us show you a new way of life. And I'm glad, and I thank my blessings and my higher power, that by the time I got around CA and by the time I got around you guys, I had been given what I like to call the most beautiful kicking from drink and drugs, that I had sufficient desperation in me to hear what it is you guys were about to tell me. I'm so pleased that when I came into the fellowship, there was we had, and we still have, I'm glad to say, we had CA foot soldiers. We had people in the trenches that were carrying this beautiful book and absolutely ready to transmit the information exactly out of this book. They were not interested in giving me therapy. They were not interested in telling me a lie. They were not interested in making me feel good. They were there to fuck up my reservations. That was their job. They did it though, and I will caveat this. They did it in the most loving and understanding way ever, but it was the brutal truth. And I have to ask myself, and recently I have been going through a phase where I've been asking myself, what is it about you, Peter, why it was that when you opened yourself up to this program, you've never had a drink or drug since? Why is it that you seem to have understood with such depth and knowledge and a level of surrender to actually recognize that actually this thing was going to kill you? This illness, which tells me that my pain is pleasure. This illness that talks to me in my own voice. It speaks to me in a way that it can convince me in my own language, make up enough stories to get me to repeat what I promised I wasn't going to do yesterday. And I've come to one and one only conclusion, that I was schooled into this 12-step program by people who had depth and weight in their message. And they took it, as I said, they took it from here. And they said, Peter, I'm going to tell you now, there is nothing unique about you. You need to abandon the idea that you are somehow different. If you do what we have done, you too will get what we got. We promise you that. In the beautiful book, it talks about, I believe it's in either How It Works or There Is a Solution. It says, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough. It's the only time the book asks you on its hands and knees, please be courageous. Because if you do, this program will work for you. It's a promise. And I had some very good teachers. They told me very early on, Peter, that the minute you get this, and get this means the minute you get that spiritual awakening, that's what they're talking about. The minute you wake up, it is incumbent upon you. It is your responsibility to stay in the trenches with us and ensure we have a fellowship from people who want to get out from under, and you are there to carry the message. You don't get this for free. You do not get this for free. There's a price to be paid for this. And I'm so glad that the kicking I got was enough for me. And you see, the other thing I will say to you is when I was taken through this program, they got me to understand my truth. They got me to understand that did I really think that there was more in me still? Was I truly ready for this? And if I wasn't, that was okay. But don't expect to get the program. Don't expect to get the spiritual experience, because that's what we're after. We're after the revolution and the evolution in our thinking and in our attitude. That's what we're after. You see, I'm going to read the beautiful bit on page 417, which says, and Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. I had to go and understand over time, what does that mean about acceptance and no mistakes and no coincidences? I had to learn that over time. And then it finally says, until I can accept my alcoholism, which I did in step 1 when I stopped saying yeah, but. When they said, are you willing, Peter? Step 1, 2, and 3 in your head. Are you willing to move to the rest? The answer was yes. Right. Until I could not stay sober. I accept life completely on life's terms. I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate. And this is the beautiful bit. Not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and my attitude. Now, how do I change my attitude? How can I change what I couldn't change for a lifetime? I had to be shown through the 12-step program, through 6 and 7. That's where I had to understand about change. 5, 6, and 7, but 6 and 7. And then what does it tell me? Everything now is about practice. Practice, Peter. My experience is, and this is why I talked about emotional sobriety, because for me, I've been educated so well by you guys that drink and drugs is not my problem. No more. I have recovered from that insanity that somehow or other drink and drugs are going to have a different reaction on me than it's had for the last 27 years. I know that, so it's not about that now. It's now about what was my problem in the first place, which was how do I do life? That was always my problem. It wasn't drink or drugs. That was my solution. I now have to learn, how do you do life, Peter? How do you fit into the stream of life? Instead of being that salmon that I make reference to, that is going upstream when the stream's going the opposite way. How do you do a right about turn, Peter, and go in the same direction as my fellows? How do I actually fit myself into the stream of life? This is what I had to learn. And this is what I continue to learn. The beautiful book talks about being placed, I love this, in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. God Almighty, I love that. Right? And how do I get there? I get there by practicing what I just read. That's the only way I get there. I don't think my way into it. I get into that position of neutrality by practicing acceptance, practicing humility, practicing the facts of life as they currently are. Sometimes I can find that very easy, and other times I'm at loggerheads with it. But what I have learned is that all will be well. You see, what I've learned to practice is to get on the other side of fear. Get on the other side of fear. And I've practiced and I've learned through you guys schooling me that most of the fears I have in my head is a bogeyman. It's a lie. It is not real. And you know what? I get more and more confidence And I get more and more easy with the fact that when fear arises, I know it's going to pass. Because I've practiced the 12-step principles. Trust God. Clean house. Help others. When I'm on that, right, I can have a little bit of a convo with fear. Absolutely, absolutely. I have short periods of fear now. So I'm not saying for 1 minute I don't experience fear. I absolutely do, but it doesn't cripple me. It does not cripple me. I do not allow it to, because I have such a powerful, principled, spiritual program. My higher power has carried me all of my life and kept me alive when I've had crack cocaine, heart attacks. When I've had acute pancreatitis that I've wanted to stab myself in my stomach because I cannot stop the pain. When I've been incarcerated, when I've been beaten up, when I've been threatened with guns because I want to rob crack dealers and because I want more crack, I can't stop using. So when I now think about what I have to deal with, now, you know, I don't want it to be twisted, and I don't want my confidence to be misunderstood for arrogance. It is not. Is that this program works for me. I was told very early on, when I was defrosting from my crack and my heroin and my alcohol, they said to me, Peter, if you are able to cultivate an attitude of gratitude, you are highly unlikely to use again, is what I was promised. And I remember thinking to myself, what does that mean? What does cultivate mean? And I realised what it means is that if we think of a farmer, in order to get a good yield off the land, you have to cultivate the land. And what does that mean in practice? That means any farmer who wants a good yield needs to turn his soil over. He needs to plough it. Just like I have to plough my life, turn my life over to my higher power. I have to ensure, just like the farmer has the right amount of seeds, the right amount of water, hopefully the right amount of sunlight, the right amount of fertilizer. And if all of those things come together, he can guarantee a good yield. That's what I have to do in my life. I have to take my inventory. I have to display humility. I have to reduce the ego. I have to be of service. I have to try and put others before me. All challenging issues, all difficult issues, but I must keep trying. And when I do that, right, I'm telling you now, I'm impenetrable. There is nothing that can happen. And when I was told that, my truth is, this is my experience, and I can only talk from my experience. I have not had a single day in just over 19 years where I've not been able to cultivate gratitude the minute I open my eyes. That just hasn't happened. Now, don't get it wrong. I can easily have gratitude and resentment running simultaneously. Don't get that twisted at all. Two different things. Two absolutely different things. And they may well be going in the same direction, but let me assure you, they will be in different lanes. And they will never cross paths. You see, because I know that my gratitude must stay in the lead in order for me to achieve a level of emotional sobriety. I must remember the truth about not only where I've come from, but the truth about what I've got now as a result of this program. And I must look at it in comparison to what it was once like. And because I give it all to those foot soldiers who educated me about all these aspects of my future sobriety. Good sponsorship. That was not there to be my friend. Who was there to help me see the truth. And to lovingly be alongside me while I feel the pain of the truth. And still be there, but nevertheless tell the truth. And see, I credit everything I have in my life, first and foremost, to my higher power. Secondly, to you beautiful people who helped me understand and see what the real problem was. You know, I can remember those days, you know, when I would promise my kids that I'm going to pick them up from school, and I really, really meant it. And somehow or other, I could still even remember the tragedy and the pain and suffering of the last use up. But somehow or other, I was going to convince myself that one more would be somewhat different, enough for me to still go and honour my kids, honour my job, honour my parents. I would still convince myself in my own voice that, yes, you are going to do all those things you promised, Peter, but you're just going to do it a little bit better having had a pipe. Remember, you know, because see, what my illness would do is it would try to take me back to those days, probably when I was about 21. And I could have a bit of cocaine, and I might even have one little pipe, and I could still go out, and I could still dance, and I could still talk. I could still have a few quid in my pockets. I could still be dressed up smart. I could still consider myself to be a bit sexy, blah. It would convince me. I would consider myself to be more academic. I'd consider myself to be able to be more vocal. I had better answers. You see, it would tell me some 27 years later, when I'm completely fucked, that you can still do that, Peter. And so I would make the supreme sacrifice. I'd have the pipe before I've gone to the school. I might even be able to prize myself, put the rest of the gear in my socks, and start making my way to work or making my way to the school or whatever it is. And somewhere along the line, it would say to me in my own voice, Peter, go back and finish off that bit you've got in your socks. Make a clean slate of it. You know, you'll do that, and of course you won't use any more today, because you will have had your fill and you'll be satisfied, is what it would tell me. And I would concede to that belief again. I never knew anything about the allergic reaction or the abnormal reaction I had. When I put that very first one in me, it was already game over. I still believed that this was a case of willpower. And all you had to do, Peter, was exert your willpower. You see? And so, needless to say, I repeated this time after time after time, because the craving had set off in me. And despite my best thinking, despite my love for my kids, despite my love for my job, myself, my family, I was going to have another one. And of course it would say to me, Peter, you've been a good boy. You've conceded. You've had one. Now you're not going anywhere until you finish satisfying me first, i.e. the beast. I'll determine when your day's finished. I will determine when you're going to go home. I will determine when you've had your fill. You won't determine that. I will. And it had me like a piece of rag under its feet. You know, degradation, humiliation, suffering, self-harming. This is what it had me doing. But the great news is, you know, another thing that happened to me, I had one of the most beautiful spiritual experiences that has never, ever left me. I was at my second meeting, and somebody put my hand up to make tea. They said, I heard the word commitment. I remember I'm detoxing from a skin full of fucking drugs. But I heard this word commitment in a meeting, and I remember thinking, that sounds scary. That sounds like you have to do something. And you might have to do something which involves others, i.e. doing it where others might benefit. That is weird to me, because the world I come from, it is all about me. So the idea of doing something and not receiving nothing back was a weird one. And somebody said, Peter, from here on in, you're going to make the tea. And I remember thinking, what a fucking cheek. Who the hell do they think they are? Do they not realise who this 7-stone scarecrow-looking black man with holes in his shoes is? Do they not know where I come from, sleeping in people's garages? Do they not know this? Do they not know how clever I am? How dare they ask me to make tea? However, and it is a however, because I've been given such a beautiful kicking, I had nowhere else to go. And for the first time in my life, at the age of 44, I took instructions by one of you lot. Another from you. And I went to Asda's the next Monday and bought the teas and biscuits, and I brought it to the meeting. And they said to me, Peter, you need to get the kettles on, and you need to get everything prepared before the meeting starts. And even though I had those initial feelings, I did as I was told. Little did I know what a surrender that was. What a beautiful surrender that was. And let me tell you something now. I made that tea with military precision. It was not to be touched by no one. The biscuits were laid out in perfect harmony. And I was going to be in control of it all. I was very nicely told by the man who was to become my sponsor, was calm down, Peter. It's, it's absolutely okay. Right? And let me tell you something. This man, who by the grace of God, I would love to know where he is. He was sleeping at the back of the church. He had a dirty blanket. He was filthy. And he would come into that meeting and take a handful of biscuits and put it in his pocket. He would pick up a cup of tea. His fingernails were black and dirty and he would spill the tea and I would get really frustrated. I never said nothing to him, but I could feel my blood boiling. And on the third time of this happening, the penny dropped. And I realized, you're here to serve, Peter. This is your new calling, son. By the grace of God, that man is you. You're here to make sure he has got a cup of tea. He has got a biscuit, because by the grace of God, there goes you. I woke up. I could cry. I got goose pimples. My heart just broke. I just melted. I realized what my new calling was to be of service. And let me tell you something now. From that day onwards, I realized what I had joined, what fellowship meant, what message we were trying to carry and what part I had to play in it. And I understood. I was beginning to get well already by then. I'd only been with you guys about a month. I could feel myself waking up, having been asleep for 27 years. I realized that it was your job, Peter, to try and help someone else wake up. Wow, what a spiritual experience that was. I've never forgotten that. And that was the anchor that I've used and remembered why service is absolutely critical. I'm going to say it, and I know I'm supposed to be displaying all forms of love and tolerance and unforgiving care and blah, 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 blah. And on the whole, I do have a fair amount of that. But let me tell you something. Anybody who thinks they're going to come and steal this program and piss off in the sunset, be they the real addict, hopefully they'll come back. Hopefully they'll find that actually we desperately need each other. Hopefully they'll realize they've got something to carry to the next person who needs to get out from under, and it is their responsibility to do that. It is not someone else's responsibility to do service. It's yours. How would I have got well if there wasn't the person who made the tea? If it wasn't for the person who opened up the door for the meeting, if it wasn't for the person who found the share finder, if it wasn't for the people who done the reading, how would I have got well? Because let me tell you something now. In 1983, I was knocking at the drug dependency clinics, telling them I'm freebasing, I'm smoking crack cocaine. They said to me, I'm sorry, we do not have any treatment for that. That's what they told me in 1983. So can you understand why it's so important, why I'm in such awe and I owe so much to the fellowship when it was you guys who told me what was wrong with me? But most importantly, absolutely most importantly, you told me what I needed to do to get out from under. And you took time. And all you ever wanted was to see me get well. Fucking hell, where do you get that? That was your only interest. You didn't care what I looked like. You didn't care what I fucking sounded like. You didn't care what I had, what I didn't have. And let me tell you something now, and I'll get ready to wrap up. The life that I have now today is indescribable. I'm going to share something with you because sometimes we are afraid to talk about these things. We think we shouldn't talk about it, but I'm going to talk about success. In 1981, as a young 20-year-old or whatever I was then, I was entrepreneurial in my mind and in my spirit. I wanted to be a wealth creator. I wanted to set up a business. And I started out on that journey, and crack cocaine come running alongside me and stripped me of it all. Absolutely robbed me of everything I was meant to be. Fast forward to today. In 2019, I decided I wanted to set up a socially driven business. And I went out there because my higher power had told me there ain't nothing you can't do if it's meant to be for you. And I went and launched that business. Fast forward to today. That business employs 30 people, 30 plus people. We've just turned over nearly £2.5 million worth of business. I'm about to build, and this is the beautiful thing, I'm about to build 10 new homes in my hometown of Hackney for social rent and supported accommodation, a £7 million project that I am negotiating now to build for my local community. And there's more. And there's more. Do not be afraid of success. My higher power tells me that I'm entitled to have everything any other person on his planet is to have, so long as I've got things in the right order. First things first. I've been educated to remember recovery first. Everything else will come off the back of that. So I'm a proud, successful businessman who's never felt, I mean, there are some downsides to giving an addict success. That in itself is problematic. And that's why I absolutely need you guys around me, right? But that put aside, I'm 62 years of age. I feel like I'm in my 30s. I have energy like I'm a 30-year-old. I'm 63 this year. I'm giving opportunities to people like us who are now coming into the field as workers, support workers, working to help people get well. I'm building homes for people who deserve to have affordable homes that they can live in high standard. That's what my higher power said he's carved out for me. I can tell you now, thank you, thank you, thank you to my wonderful fellowship, to people who just wrapped their arms around me the day I walked in on January the 6th, 2006. You just became my scaffold. And you held me up until I could stand on my own 2 feet. I'm eternally grateful, absolutely eternally grateful. I thank you, I thank you, I thank you for allowing me to be of service and to be with you guys on this wonderful journey of life. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, I can see Danny T. Do you want to come in, Danny?
You're right. Yeah, thanks. I'm Danny, I'm an addict. Thanks for your share, Peter. I love listening to you, mate. Yeah, you've got that like passion. It's like, as you can tell. Like, It's funny you mentioned that reading about 417 about acceptance and nothing happens without absolutely nothing happens in this world that God didn't mean or something like that. And I was reading that today with my sister actually, and we was talking about it. And I'm really working on becoming higher power reliant, which I know is necessary for like long-term sobriety. Do you know what I mean? I can stay clean for a while off gratitude, relief, God's grace. But like my brother died in January of an overdose, and things like that make me think like, how the fuck is that meant to be? Do you know what I mean? It's not all right. It's not going to be all right. I'm never going to see him again. And like, not just around that situation, but like when life turns up, yeah, like what would be your process with dealing with that? And like, how do you get over like I said, not specifically that. I don't want you to feel like you're belittling my brother's death, but just
No.
like when life really turns up, like how do you come to terms with stuff like that?
First and foremost, I'm so sorry to hear about your loss, and I really, understand that that would be difficult for me and anybody. And I hope I didn't come across as though there is no issues that can't, it isn't exactly as it's meant to be. But what I have learned, it's not. It's not about what has happened. So it's not about the detail of what has happened. It's more about the fact that I can't change it. So I'm learning to accept that I can't change a situation rather than saying the situation is right or wrong. That's what I'm learning. I can't change it. So if a situation happens, a simple example is a guy at work today came, I heard that he's planning to leave. My first thoughts were, my business is going to suffer. He's going to, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. My second thought was actually, if that's true, how do I find out what the facts are? And I chose to take that attitude. And when I took that attitude, actually my anxieties and everything else just went because it wasn't relevant, because his situation became more important. But that comes, and you will have heard, I kept using the word practice. Because remember, I'm 19 years in. I've had 19 years of practice. So there is no, you just really just get there. I take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 4 steps back. Do you get me? But I keep practicing. That's it.
Thanks, Danny, for your question. Thanks, Peter. Next up, we've got Danny F. Come on in, Danny.
Thanks, Katie. My name's Danny. I'm an addict, and
Hi,
thank you
Danny.
so much, Peter. Thanks for the message. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I really, really loved your share. My question for you is, which which one of your spiritual tools or which part of your spiritual practice over the years has helped you to grow towards that emotional sobriety? Thank you.
I'll tell you the one that I think has helped me to grow the most. And that is the one where I am specific to my higher power. And what do I mean by that? I mean, when I do my morning meditation and I have an anxiety-provoking meeting coming up that morning, say I've got fear that we're not performing well on a contract or whatever it is. In my morning meditation, I will say to my higher power, please help me, right, to see the truth in today's meeting. Help me to listen. Help me, God, to be calm. And so what I found is as I've practiced being specific, so rather than just doing my step 3 and my step 7 prayer and then, go through my day, I pick specific things. and I talk to my higher power about it. And I'm going to just be honest, because some of these are the most difficult things. If I'm having difficulty in a relationship, if I'm having difficulty with sex, if I'm having difficulty I'm specific. And what I found is the more I do that, the more I get the answers over a period of time to that specific problem. And the more confident I get that I will get the answer, the less I worry about it in the first place. But it's, this is why in our literature, it talks and it continuously uses the word practice. That's the only answer I've got for you. Everything about this is practice.
Thanks for your question, Danny. Next up, we've got Michael. Come in, Michael.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for your share, Peter. It was absolutely out of this world, mate. It really was. Just the energy coming through the screen was next level. You sort of already answered my question, which is sort of like thrown us off a bit. So I'm just going to throw a random one out here now. So you said like originally, you begrudgingly made tea for your service, and obviously now with you've got your business life and like your civilian life keeping like taking off, if you like. What do you do? What does your step 12 look like today? To keep you in the fellowship, to keep you grounded. What's your step 12 practice today?
A really good question. Because I have been questioning that myself. My step 12 now is a recognition, right, that it will be in all forms. So what do I mean by that? My step 12 is, do I have a home group? Do I attend that home group? Do I make myself available for service? Do I have a commitment? Do I respond whenever a sponsee tries to get hold of me as much as possible, even when I don't want to? And sometimes I don't want to. Am I making myself available wherever possible to take someone through the work, even if I've got a hugely busy life? And sometimes they all vary. But what I'll tell you, my step 12 have one thing which is consistent. I'm always available in my fellowship, whatever that requires. It might be, nowadays, I find my step 12 is much more about when I've finished in a meeting, do I stay around for 5-10 minutes and pick out the individuals that I sense might just benefit from me just having a chat with them? They might. Do I make sure that I remember what they said? And do I make myself available just to listen in case they want to talk a bit more about that? Do I take their numbers and when they text me, I make sure I call them back? That's how I do it now. I realise it says in the 12th step, having had a spiritual experience, we tried. See, they understand, our forefathers, our ones who laid out this book. They understand there's no perfection here. I used to get caught up with being a perfect sponsor, having heaps and reams of sponsees. No more. What's the quality of my message? That's more important now. So that's how I do it. A little of everything. Much more interesting.
Lovely. Thanks very much for that. We're going to put the question down to 2 minutes, guys, due to the time. So next question in will be Lee. Come on in, Lee.
Hi, Leah. Yeah, I'm sat on Leah. I'm sat on this edge of my seat right now. You've really, what was my question? You've just phoned me because it was about sponsorship. You mentioned your sponsorship isn't your friend. and I've had a little issue with that. So how would you address that? Because I had a sponsor who was trying to befriend me, but I need to get that balance right. What can you recommend and how to find a sponsor that?
Well, you know what? I, in a way, it's a difficult question to answer because when I was first sponsored, there was a very consistent, right, approach to sponsorship. So kind of wherever you went, you kind of got the same message. And because the message was only about what's in the big book, it was dead easy to get sponsored because it came straight from the book. So people didn't really care too much about being friends and blah, 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 blah. Now, what I think in answer to your question is to recognize that we're all relatively unwell, right? And I always say to my sponsees from the beginning, please, whatever you do not put me on a pedestal. I'm only a drunk and a drug addict who has understood how not to do that. There might be a little bit more I can give, right? But generally, don't put me on a pedestal. I will let you down. Fact. And, a bit of trial and error, but whatever you do, rely on your higher power first.
Thank you, Leah, for your question. Thanks, Peter. David, do you want to come in and be the last question for us for the evening, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Peter, thank you so much for your chair, mate. The question I've got is you've got so much passion for this stuff, and I can hear it in your voice. And that I was just thinking, like, where you're 19 years now, and you've got so much passion for recovery, how have you kept that passion? And have you faced periods where during your recovery you've hit a brick wall and you've had to change a few things to keep recovery exciting and keep that passion in your belly? Like what have you done to keep that going?
Absolutely, Dave. When you heard me make reference just now to 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 to the side, that's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. There's been lulls, right, where I've done the bare minimum, right, because I've got caught up in either external stuff or I've let somebody else become my higher power, a partner, or, oh God, make no bones about it, I've had all kinds of curves and twists and turns and ups and downs. But throughout all of those things, there's been some things that have always been consistent. So I've always had a home group. I've always had a commitment. And I've always attended meetings. So even though there's been lulls, I've never been too far away from the reminder. And that's what I mean, being around you guys, I get the reminder about my truth. And that's what's happened. So I think it's fair to say it's not a straight line. It's not a trajectory that just keeps going like that. Not at all. Peaks and troughs. That's why it says we trudge the road to happy destiny, because there are moments where it will be a trudge. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Heather, can I get a brief, quick question from you? Because I did call hands, but come on in, please.
You're mute, Heather.
Hi, sorry, Katie. I was going to answer that, so I put my hand down, and then all the questions I was going to ask had been answered. So I guess I'll just put the chair back to Peter. I love listening to your chair. It was more energy, more passion. That's what I kept thinking in my head every time you were speaking. It was amazing. And I too work in supported housing, so you've also that. I wanted to say something about that.
Can you quit to the question? Sorry, apologies. Sorry.
I haven't really got a question, but yeah, I just wanted to say that. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Right, guys, that makes it to 9 nearly. So that brings us to the end of question time.